Hello. Hey, everyone. Let's see. We get the right picture on here today. Well, welcome to the show. Matt, it looks like you're just on the screen. I'm going to let you take over while we sort out what's going
Well, hold on. Let's try something real
on. Oh,
quick.
there we go. You're maximized. Hi, everyone. I'm off screen now. I'm Mike Elson, founder of VoiceLessons.com. We just figured out our technology challenge here. So, Matt, welcome to the show. With me, I have Dr. Matthew Edwards. Always good to do these live shows on Thursday with you.
Yeah, thanks. I'm excited to be here. Got some good questions tonight, things we haven't talked about before.
Awesome. So I'll just jump into question number one. Let's see here if I can figure out this part again too. Here we go. All right. So question number one for you guys tonight. This one comes in from Claudia. It was really fun putting these questions together for tonight's show. So she writes in, do you think there's a particular age that is safe to introduce students to the chest mix, head mix registers? So when do you start? When do you think there's an age for registers?
Well, I think you can start at any time that the student's capable of thinking about different sounds. It's just the delivery that's different. So, for instance, if you've got like a 9-year-old that's taking lessons, first of all, I think that if you're going to be teaching anybody younger, pre-puberty, add in musicianship training and basic keyboard skills. So what I mean is just making sure they know how to play vocal exercises on the piano, make sure they know how to read a lead sheet, make sure that they know what chord symbols are if they're with you long enough, and that on the piano or a guitar they can play that. Because for singers, once they can start to learn some amount of self-accompanying, man, that really opens up doors, especially in the commercial style. But we think about it in more complex terms about closure and things like that. With a young kid, you just need to make it like cartoon voices, is to say, what is like a spooky sound like you would see in a Halloween movie, like a whoo. Well, that's head voice, right? It's a hootie ooh vowel in the head voice. And then we can call it like the spooky voice. And you're getting their head voice training in there. And then you can get the parent voice, which is go to your room. They've heard that one before. And so they can get their parent voice that has the strength in it. And then their mix is just their speech-like voice, the way that they talk. And the idea is you're just teaching them. Now, as I'm demonstrating it, I was doing it on different pitches, but we could take the same pitch range and have them learn how to sing it like they speak, ma, 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 sing it like a parent would speak, ma, 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 and then sing it like a spooky, spirit would speak, ma, 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 and try to keep it more in that same pitch range. And so you're basically essentially with all of this, even though we use the terms to talk about the function, you're just teaching the voice to make different sounds. You're teaching the voice to make all the sounds that are present between buzzy and breathy. Buzzy is chest dominant, or traditionally what we've called that for 150 plus years. And breathy is more of head dominant in this registration terminology, and everything in between is a mix of the two. So, I don't really think there's an age that's too young to introduce it. I think you just want to introduce it in a fun way. One of the ways that my wife used to do this is she would play what she called the hat game. And so we still have it around somewhere. It's a box full of different hats. And with her younger students, she would pull out a hat and toss it to the student, and then have the student make up a voice that fit the hat. And, or have other like little things that could go on them as well. And so again, then they started thinking about different characters or different moods or different ideas having different vocal qualities, so that they look at their voice as a playful part of their expression, and they don't get locked into having to get it right. Because when they're young, they should just explore, right? And rename it whatever you want it to be. Then as they get older and older, if they're already making great sounds and you're doing the exercises and you're incorporating head, mix, and chest, and they don't call it that, that's fine. If you have somebody that's going to go out into college or a musical theater career where these terms are used all the time, then start teaching them what the real terms are. But, at the end of the day, what really matters is the sounds they're capable of making, not what we label them.
Right. So vocal function first, and definitely we don't need to wait to teach the concepts of registration and the different registers. Just experiment and be creative with how you refer to them based on who you're teaching.
Yep.
Okay, awesome. Well, Claudia, I hope that helps you. Let's jump on into our next question. This question comes in from Emily. She writes in, is it normal for the larynx to move when singing with vibrato?
Yeah. So if you go online onto YouTube and look up John Nix, and stroboscopy. It's STROBOSCOPY. Stroboscopy. It's summer break. I'm trying to spell the hard words here. But if you go on to John Nick Stroboscopy on YouTube, you're going to find like this 15-minute video where he has a singer with a camera in their nose singing. And one of the things you're going to see is the singer alternates between vibrato and straight tone, and the larynx is bouncing up and down.
I want to see it. Yeah.
Okay. When it's in straight tone, it's straight, and the larynx is just in a fixed position. And then as the vibrato comes in, you start seeing the larynx pop up and down. Well, we got to go back then and look at what we know about vibrato. I think still one of the best chapters currently on the market about vibrato is in this book here. This is Vocal Technique by Julia Davids and Stephen Latour. We actually should have them on the show at some point, so it's a great book. And then there they talk about that good vibrato really comes from coordinated airflow and registration control at the vocal fold level with freedom in the vocal tract, right? And a structure that is going to lend itself to producing a vibrato. So if your neck is all the way out here, then that's going to be pretty tough. And if your neck is tucked down here, that's a problem. So we want to balance, right? You got to remember that the larynx is held into place by muscles both above the larynx and below the larynx. If you're grabbing on with those muscles, it's going to hold everything still and you're not going to get much vibrato. If you let these muscles go, there should be a little bit of movement that will accompany the vibrato. You may not be aware of it at all. You may not see it at all. But, and you know, we need more studies than one video. So to be clear, you know, in science, we always want to try to study as many people as possible. But I would say in general, when I'm helping people find their vibrato, they're locking their throat muscles. And that's part of the reason they don't have it, right? So we don't necessarily want to see your larynx bouncing huge, but if you see it move a little bit, that's normal. If we're inside on a strobe and we see it moving a little bit, that's normal. So yeah, the short answer is it's okay for it to move. We don't want it to be out of control. And really with all things related to vibrato, if you focus on coordinating the respiratory system with the vocal folds, right? And you get that combination. So there's always the appropriate amount of flow and you have freedom in your tongue and jaw. So you're not locking and holding things, because when you do lock and hold, it tightens up the muscles under your chin. And again, those muscles right under your chin attach to your larynx. So if all these muscles are tight and locked in, you're not going to get the vibrato that you want. So get all that stuff out of the way, vibrato should arrive, and then, you know, it's going to manifest itself in different ways. We think that probably more than likely there is more than one way that people make vibrato. I think that sometimes we always want to look for the one way that you do this and say, well, how do you do blank, as if there's one answer only. But the reality is there's, you know, humans are highly adaptable. We all figure out things on our own. And so there's likely more than one way, but all of them come back to freedom.
So do you think it's possible to have vibrato without the larynx moving at all?
Yeah, I mean, anything's possible. I think we have to look in there and see. I think, again, there may be micro movements that we aren't aware of. And then if we go in on a strobe, you might see it as well. You got to remember that with vibrato, there are amplitude variations, which means the volume, how loud the voice is. And there are frequency modulations, meaning how far above and below the pitch that you go. And then there's the distance between those, which are the cycles of vibrato that we hear. So there's 3 parts of vibrato. We believe it comes from neurological effects, right? So you have signals from your brain that go into the muscles. And if you put your hands in front of you like this and pull your arms in opposite directions, as those muscles engage, you're going to feel a slight tremble happening inside of your arms. That tremble happens to be at around 5 to 8 cycles per second, which also happens to be what we find in vibrato, a cycle of around 5 to 8 cycles per second. So we think more than likely that's what's leading to the vibrato. And, you know, there's front to back movement in the vocal folds that we're starting to explore now, where we're always thinking about pitch and timbre coming from a bottom to top. And now we're realizing there's a front to back motion as well. So it could be that everybody has a different combination of those vibrational patterns at the vocal fold level that give them different results. So, yeah, I think it's possible. We may find that out there. I think it's also really possible you're not going to notice it. And, you know, this is an area where we need a lot more research.
Okay, great. But I would say when she says, is it normal for the larynx to move? We don't know if she means move an inch or move a millimeter.
That's a great point. Yeah.
Right? So I would say, you know, in your professional opinion, if someone's larynx is like noticeably shaky,
yeah, I'd check in on that.
That might be more like a wobble, not a vibrato.
Yep.
Okay.
Right. And then it depends on the style. I mean, if it's somebody's style of singing and that's what they want and it moves like that, and it's not hurting them, then it's fine. If they don't like the sound, they don't like the movement, and it doesn't feel good, any of those things are true, then fix it.
Right. Okay. Yep. Awesome. Well, Emily, hopefully that answers your question. If it doesn't, just write us back. Let us know. Maybe there's a second part to your question. So moving on to our next one. This one comes in from Leslie. Thanks for writing in, Leslie. She writes in, how young is too young to teach someone to belt?
Yeah. So there's no easy answer to this, Leslie. This, it comes up frequently when I'm teaching workshops. You're going to find that, humans are variable. We're all different shapes and sizes. We come with different natural abilities. We also think that environment plays a big role in that. So let's say you have a student who comes from a loud household and where people are often speaking, really with a lot of power. There's 7 kids in the house. There's all kinds of yelling from the time that they're born. That student may have a way, more powerful voice because of their environment than a student who grew up in an apartment building in New York City where the walls are paper thin and they had to keep their voice down. So all of a sudden now you got 2 students and you're saying, well, when's it, too young to teach somebody to belt? Well, the one who's really quiet, they're probably not ready yet because they haven't used their voice that much. And so trying to go from 0 to belt is going to be really rough. If the other one comes in and they're making belt-like sounds, it's not hurting them. They're not losing their voice. The sound isn't flat. Nothing is changing. They might actually be okay. Right? You're going to have to monitor them over time, but it could be that they're naturally gifted to have that kind of a voice and their environment put them in a position where they were cultivating that kind of a vocal quality all along the way. So belt is natural for them. Then we have everything in the middle. All right. And with all the decisions we make, we always have to think to ourselves, what is the balance between the client's need, right, and the body's ability? So sometimes you're going to have somebody that falls more on the soft-spoken side and they want to do nothing more than belt, but you're listening to that voice and you're really nervous they're going to get hurt. Well, technically, in normal vocal development from the beginning on, we always teach people to mix first because you then intensify that mix to get to belt. So I would explain that to them. I would say, look, I want to get you to the belting place, but we have to make sure all your muscles are ready to do that. Otherwise, it could end up giving us a problem and it'll take even longer for you to learn how to belt, right? So it might seem—
Great way to explain it.
It might seem a little slower than what you were expecting, but I promise you, if you commit to practicing and we get this mix developing, when your body's ready, it's going to tell us it's ready because you'll just all of a sudden start making those sounds because that's what tends to happen. Right? You get the mix down as you're building up the ability to bring heady mix down and chesty mix up, and you're intensifying the heady mix and you're de-intensifying the chesty mix. You're weaving through that middle. You'll start to discover sounds, and one day a belt sound might come out and you'll go, bingo, that one. Do that again. And it'll be a baby belt. And maybe it goes up to a G, right? An F, a G. All right? Nothing even extremely high. And then you say, that's your first belt note. And you mark it down on a chart for them, and you say, now we get to see where it goes from here. And then you slowly start helping them build out from that point. On the other side, you may have somebody who comes from, again, a setting where they were doing all of that, heavy talking, loud talking for a long time, and they have some natural belt qualities, but there's veins popping out on the side when they put it into songs, and they're trying to sing songs that are too high for them. In that instance, you're going to have to really talk to them and say, hey, you're awfully young, and showing them some examples of singers who aren't red in the face and don't have veins popping out on their neck and be like, it's probably not what we want.
Yeah, definitely.
And don't tell them they're not allowed to belt at all, but say to them, I feel like you have one volume level of belt. And if you listen to some of your favorite singers live, they have multiple qualities of belt. And then, allergies are kicking in. Summer in Virginia. But then you tell them, show them an example of somebody like Ariana does a good job of bringing in all kinds of different levels of vocals, and show them that kind of finesse and say, hey, we need to start doing exercises to make sure that you have that amount of finesse in your own voice. And most of the time that will make it easier to teach them variations of mix. In general, you never want anybody belting too loud, too high for too long. So if they're coming in wanting to sing D's and you're listening to them and they're getting flat within 5 to 10 minutes and a wobble's coming in or anything else, you need to explain that to the student. Be like, look, you can't even sing that way for 10 minutes. I want you to sing that way for an hour. So we're going to have to do some training to get your stamina up to get you to that point, right? And then just be, what I find is if you're communicating with the client and answering all their questions, the compliance gets higher and higher because they're going to be like, but my friend Susie doesn't have to do that. Okay, so, and then start digging information, you know, and then you can explain, well, everybody's anatomy is a little bit different. And it could be that Susie's body is just got a little bit of a thicker vocal fold than yours. Doesn't mean either one is better than the other. But I'm telling you, if you go into a performance and you warm up and you're already have used that note and then you sing the song once and that note's flat at the end, you're also not going to be happy. So let's work on getting you so that you feel super confident stepping on stage every time. And then with age, this belt is going to grow. We see big growths in the voice between the age of 20 and 23, and oftentimes around the age all the way up to 27, 30. So, you know, it can come at different times. We just had a senior that graduated from my university program who was working on her belt a lot throughout her whole 4 years with a great teacher. Something happened in March. And all of a sudden, I was at a outdoor concert and I heard somebody singing and I was like, I pulled out my phone and I zoomed in and I was like, what? And she had been working on this with a guest, composer and director. And I was like, holy cow, what is that? And I couldn't believe it. Well, she was in a cast with somebody else that she was trying to keep up with a little bit and her body was ready for it. And a cannon came out. And for the rest of the semester, it was there. Took 3.5 years of working on that belt quality and a magic song and a magic moment that kicked this kid over into this incredible belt voice that we always felt was there, but it just wasn't ready yet. So sometimes you just got to wait. It will reveal itself and then you train it.
Yeah, that's a great story. Awesome. Okay, so there's no like age number. It's not like, you know, you're 6 so you can't belt, but you got to listen to the voice. And I think what I'm hearing you say is the body's got to tell you it's ready, and then it just happens. Don't force it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess what I would say in general is always under the age of puberty, wherever the student is in the puberty cycle, before they've made it through puberty, try to focus on mix, right? Okay. And if you're getting societal pressures, family pressures, Arts Academy pressures to teach them to belt, go with where you think they are on that spectrum, from introvert to extrovert, from quiet voice talking to loud voice talking. And then, you know, proceed carefully. We do know that when people get a vocal injury before the age of 18, they're more likely to continue to have problems the rest of their life. So we never want to get a student into that position, right? But if you kind of do the stuff I'm talking about, my wife and I have been doing this for years. We've never had a student get an injury in our studio. We've had students, you know, come to us with problems that we've struggled to help them figure out, but I've never had anybody go from being perfectly fine to having a voice pathology in about 20 years of doing this. So it's totally possible. You just got to talk with your client. It's called motivational interviewing. It's a skill. You can look it up and really start to figure out how to, you know, negotiate their mental challenges with exercises and stuff along the way too. And the outcomes will be much better.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Leslie, I hope that answer helps you. And write us back. Let us know how that goes or what your specific circumstances are. So I'm going to go to our next one. This one comes in from Met. It writes in, I know that in falsetto, the voice quality is generally soft. How do you get that sound louder, richer, and powerful?
Great. So the original question was a little bit longer than this, Matt. I just couldn't fit it all on the screen. And one of the things I just want to point out is he was naming certain artists, people like the Bee Gees. He named some other, you know, artists, even named a classical countertenor and said, you know, I know that the vocal folds are, you know, barely on the upper edge when this falsetto quality is doing it. So how do you get that louder, richer, more powerful sound like you hear from these other people? So I'm going to deal with the CCM one first, then we'll deal with the classical. Okay. In the CCM world, it's the mic. The microphone that is in front of your mouth boosts the sound significantly. And specifically, it boosts the sound in the upper frequency range where your vocal folds in falsetto are not making the same power acoustically that they would be in a mix or a belt. So you get on that mic, it's already going to give you a boost. Especially on modern recordings, it's pretty common for them to double the vocals. So you sing the same vocal twice. On Gautier's Somebody That I Used to Know, if you listen to the isolated vocal on that, you'll hear the doubling. If you listen to Robin Thicke, there's an example of him singing the dance song thing that they had like 5 years ago. And you can hear he's like doubled or tripled as well in his falsetto. And you can compare that to when he went on the Jimmy Fallon show and they did the little toy instrument version of that. And you'll hear how weak his falsetto actually is in person, and then jump over to the track and you'll hear how strong it sounds in the recording studio.
So you're talking about stacking. It's duplicating and doubling the sound.
Yeah, and they'll just say sometimes, sing it again. And then they'll say, all right, sing it a third time. Now they also have plugins that are doublers. They have plugins that are called thickeners. You can also use delay and set a delay that'll make it seem like it's a doubled sound. So there's all kinds of trickery. You can go in there and EQ it to bring up the power. You can compress it to add things to it, and then you can put auto-tune on it to correct any, vibrato that's showing up. There's all kinds of ways to do it. Okay. So on all the CCM styles met, more than likely what you are noticing is the audio technology. So what I would say is try to get somewhere where you can play with a microphone to see, how much it's going to impact your voice. And then ideally probably get some sort of a microphone to practice with. Now, on the classical example that you talked about, countertenors are rare, right? I went through many years of college. I think I got like almost 12 and a half years of college. And I think I went to school with one countertenor and maybe 2 or 3 people who thought they were and then discovered they weren't. Okay. And none of them have had big careers as a countertenor. They're rare. On the flip side, I've got a lot of, friends who are singing all over the world in every other voice type. So it's not like, it's a super common thing to be able to do. What we do know about the voice is that after you have trained all those intrinsic muscles of the larynx, you can then slowly start to increase the amplitude of the voice. And then as you increase the amplitude of the voice, you can fine tune the acoustics to boost frequencies to make your voice appear louder without having to do additional work at the vocal fold level. And this is what high-end professional opera singers are doing. They're spending 10, 15 years of training before they're really getting out in public at big opera houses. And during that 10 to 15 years, they're really coordinating the musculature, they're developing their respiratory system, and they're starting to get the vocal folds to a place where they can add more and more air pressure. And with time, the body will adapt. And then for the people who are meant to be countertenors, you get that big, powerful sound that'll cut through in an opera house. There's also some acoustic things that are happening in that part of the range where it happens to be that those first couple of harmonics in a countertenor range are at frequencies that we don't find in the orchestra. So that also makes it naturally a little bit easier to hear that voice in an acoustic setting.
Gotcha. Awesome. So in terms of, I guess, not for a countertenor, are there any exercises you would have, for developing the falsetto to make it, maybe a developed falsetto or reinforced falsetto, or, are there varying degrees of falsetto besides just falsetto mix?
Yeah, I mean, for everybody, you're going to have to play around with your own. So what I would do is start off in your breathy head and maybe start with an ooh just to make sure the air is flowing. Ooh. Then maybe switch to a vowel like E. E, your tongue arches up and narrows the space in your vocal tract. It might give you a little bit of assistance in getting better closure at the vocal fold level, right? Because as air tries to get out, it can't, and it'll help push those folds together. Then as you switch to that and you develop that, you're going to see how much you can intensify it. You're going to intensify it by trying to move a little bit more air through. And you're going to do that by contracting your abs a little bit. You might find that if you start moving too much air through, it's actually going to make it weaker. So you might also want to try less air. And you're just going to want to play around with that. And you start to open up like to an A vowel. Then you're going to try to morph the vowel to see what variation the vowel gives you the strongest quality. Is it a bright one? Hey! Is it a nasally one? Hey! Go for that Shakira sound. Or is it a balanced one? Hey! Or is it a hooty one? Hey! Then when you find the one that seems to give you the best sound, figure out, well, what did I change? Was it a throat change? Was it a jaw change? Was it a lip change? Was it a tongue change? And then incorporate that into the mix as well. And then you just want to make sure that you're drilling that part of your voice every single day. I don't do that. So mine isn't particularly strong. I'm also a low voice. Some low voices have great falsettos. I never really have. It just is what it is, right? So there is definitely, definitely an anatomical component of this as well. Some people are naturally more inclined to have a strong falsetto that goes really high. Other people aren't. When I've actively changed mine before, I've definitely increased the range of my falsetto. So you can do that with practice. But you will find that some people may have 4 or 5 notes higher than you do in their falsetto. And a lot of times you're just not going to get there. So like I've had students that have that super high soprano C6 in their voice. I've never been able to get much more than just that G5. And it's usually slightly on the flat side. Nothing I do is going to get my voice up to a high C. So sometimes we have to accept that we have anatomical limits, and that just is what it is. But you're a unique person. Use your unique instrument.
Awesome. Okay, well, thank you for those exercises. Matt, hopefully that helps you. Please write us back again if you need more. If you have any more follow-up questions on that, we'd love to help you out. So let's see. This next one comes in from Karina. She writes in, how would overtone singing benefit a singer, and how can this be achieved?
Right.
Before you explain, what is overtone singing?
So overtone singing is something I am fascinated by and am not an expert on, but it's the ability to get your vocal track to amplify the frequencies coming off of your voice and to change only those resonating frequencies to get pitches that move. Sometimes I can do it in a way that other people can hear. Sometimes I can't. So we'll see what's going to come out today. But you would pick a pitch to start with at your vocal fold level at like a and you're listening now that is there. Now, as I tune my vowel, you may start to hear other pitches surface. So that was the overtone singing, okay? Now to do that, you have to learn how to make super coordinated movements of your tongue, your jaw, your lips, and the height of your larynx. All right, so it's a complicated thing. But as you start to learn how to do that, you'll get really good at knowing what positioning is going to call out what overtones on what pitches, and you'll be able to sing a drone pitch with a clearly intelligible melody above it. So if you go over onto YouTube, you're going to find plenty of people who do it. Look up MRI overtone singing. And if you do that, you're going to find a video of a singer in an MRI machine where you get to actually see the X-ray image of their body in motion as they overtone sing. Wow. Use that as your first tutorial. Play around with what the performer is doing and see if you can replicate some of those sounds. Can it benefit you? 100%. Learning how to do anything with your voice can benefit you. You just got to look at what part of the instrument is benefiting. This particular thing, since it's mainly resonance adjustments, is going to give you great control of your resonators. You are going to be able to micromanage every movement that you make. If you're a classical singer who switches in between languages, that could be really, really good for you. If you're a CCM singer, it's going to give you every color you've ever imagined available to you on demand. So I would, Karina, really highly encourage you to pursue this because it's awesome. I think it can help you. And after you learn that, the next thing I would say to do, or you could actually do it simultaneously, is beatboxing. Because beatboxing really requires you to learn how to use all of those articulators. And it can be fun as well. One of my favorite things to do is to play around with something similar to overtone singing. You get a pitch going and you beatbox around the pitch. And you can actually even put melodies into it. So, right? Drives my kids nuts when I sing Mary Had a Little Lamb that way. But hey, it's a great articulation drill for me. So, when I'm warming up, if things feel tight, I'll just be playing around with beatboxing and stuff like that to get everything moving around. When I first tried to learn how to do that, it was a disaster. I didn't have the control. This was 15 years ago at this point. But I didn't have the control in my articulators to make that pitch sustain and get my mouth to move in front of it. So I had to learn that, right? Because it's a motor skill. But then, you know, I learned it to an extent that made me happy because I only did it really to understand it as a teacher in case anybody ever needed help with it, and because I thought it was cool, right? So I went as far as I wanted to with it. Again, YouTube's your friend. Go check out some of the, you know, tutorials that they have online. You can start experimenting with it. And then there's always, you know, workshops available for you to learn how to beatbox. And that's a lot of fun as well.
Awesome. So some great little challenges, I would say, for our viewers out there to try to sing an overtone series and then also to go try some beatboxing. So a couple of extra things. So Karina, hopefully that helps you. Definitely learning to overtone sing can help you and is a good challenge. So let's see. Let me check the chat here. Okay. Love Tour. Thanks for tuning in. Yes. Hi. It's good to see you. And I think that's it, Matt. Any final thoughts?
No, I mean, thanks for tuning in tonight. Keep the questions coming. It was great to have some new questions. So if you are watching this and you've got things you would like to know about your own singing trouble spots that you're dealing with, things you don't understand, send it in. Just jump on over to our website. You can contact us or shoot us a message through Facebook. We always love including new questions, new guests on the show. And, you know, take care of your voice, explore every sound possible, and enjoy the summer. It's beautiful out right now.
Yep, absolutely. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Thanks for tuning in, and have a great week. Drop us your question. All right. We'll see you.
Good night.
Bye.